Okay, well, it looks like we're still waiting for a couple panelists to join, but we have a few slides to go through anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I just want to start off by saying hello and thank you for everybody for attending. On behalf of the Office of Postdoctoral Affairs and NC State Postdoc Association, I'd like to thank our panelists for joining today. We appreciate you taking the time to speak with us and with the NC State postdoc community and giving us your invaluable insights as former postdocs from such diverse backgrounds and specialities. Just make sure I'm running. Here we go. Okay. First off, I'd like to start with a couple logistics. We've turned off your ability to share your audio, and we would like it if you would turn off your video for everybody except for the panelists and then hosts. That way we can keep all the attention on the panelists and it's easier to kind of see who's talking. And we will return your ability to unmute yourself after the panel is over and once we've moved into the social happy hour. This will help mitigate distractions and keep our focus on the panelists. You can click the gallery view option in the top right corner of your Zoom link in the screen to see all panelists' videos at once. And we do encourage you to ask our panelists questions by submitting your questions to our co-hosts along with your name, institution, and department if you're able to, or if you want to just write the question really quick, I get that. Please submit your questions via the chat to Marie-Amélie Petry, Sheila Saya, or Arnab Sengupta using the chat window. Again, this will help lower distractions and keep the panel running smoothly. Thank you for your cooperation. And additionally, we are recording this session. So we're going to post it following the event so that postdocs and anybody else who's unable to attend and who's interested in the information will be able to access it afterwards. So just to let you know. Okay. I'd like to start off by going over talking about the NC State Postdoc Association. We're an organization operated and ran by postdocs. The co-presidents are Arnab Sengupta and Ana Zuleta Carrera. The Postdoc Research Symposium, which originally was supposed to happen today, but we moved to this career panel instead, is co-chaired by myself, Brenda Zimmer, and Marie-Amélie Petry and Sheila Saya. The programming committee is chaired by Yuen Din. The community building committee is chaired by Areum Kennedy. Communications and alumni engagement is chaired by Melissa Watley, and the advocacy committee is chaired by Pietro Ranieri. The PDA is hosting a town hall event on June 15th, 2020 at noon, online, obviously. But it's a great way if you have any interest at all in the Postdoc Association and what we have going on. It's a great way to learn more about the committees and to try to get involved. Every Thursday at 5 p.m. we host a virtual happy hour for postdocs. It's a great way to stay connected and connect in a smaller group setting with panelists. Sorry. Yeah, so today we're doing a social happy hour immediately following this event. I apologize. And it's a great way to connect in a smaller group setting with our panelists following the panel. We'll be using the breakout rooms to facilitate more informal discussions with the panelists, and Sheila Saya will have more information for you regarding that later at the end of the panel. We also encourage you to attend the weekly happy hour, which is what I started with, which takes place on Thursdays at 5 p.m. It's a great way to network and connect with the NC State postdoc community. Originally, as I mentioned, today's event would have been an in-person research symposium. As an alternative to the poster presentation, the Office of Postdoctoral Affairs is highlighting research being done by postdocs at NC State. There's a short submission form that can be found on OPA's Impactful blog. It's a great way to get your name out there, and it's also useful exercise in communicating your research more broadly to a broad community. So please take advantage of this opportunity. And connect with us. Please connect with us on all of our social media platforms. It's a great way to stay connected with the postdoc community and to learn of any upcoming programming, such as this panel. Today, we reached 300 members in our NC State Postdocs Past and Present LinkedIn group. So let's keep it growing. Okay, so now I'm going to kind of introduce the panel and go through some their biographies, and then we'll get into questions and panel discussion. First up, we have Dr. Tolga Kenner. He earned a Ph.D. in mechanical engineering from Bogazici University in Turkey, where he worked on atomistic modeling, simulation, and design of new generation nanomaterials. He joined NC State Department of Materials Science and Engineering in 2018 as a postdoc and continued his research in computational material science field for different materials and methods. His role at NC State focused on computational design of high-performance metals, incorporating different machine learning and data science tools. As a result of his growing interest around artificial intelligence in different fields than theoretical research, he started to work for GSK at RTP Durham as a data scientist. In his new role, he develops natural language processing applications for business intelligence, working on textual data coming from health practitioners all over the country. Dr. Kenner has also been doing some research on global scale environmental sustainability as a side project within the scope of his and his partner's pilot company, PECSR, based in Toronto, Canada. Thank you, Dr. Kenner. Next up, we have Dr. Areum Kennedy. Dr. Kennedy is an assistant professor in the Department of Molecular and Structural Biochemistry at North Carolina State University, where her lab focuses on how the immune system impacts metabolic associated disorders. Her research specifically investigates the impact of nutrients on immune cell function and identifying molecular signals responsible for T cell activation in metabolic disease. Dr. Kennedy graduated from Florida Agriculture and Mechanical University with a Bachelor's of Science in 2001 and a Master's of Science in 2003 in chemistry. After completion of her MS, she received biomedical research training at NIH NHLBI Molecular Disease Branch in Bethesda, Maryland. While at NIH, she developed an interest in nutrition and obesity. She completed her PhD training at UNC in Greensboro in nutrition, investigating the anti-obesity mechanisms of dietary fatty acids. She completed her postdoctoral training in immunometabolism at Vanderbilt University and joined the faculty in 2014 as a research instructor and was promoted to a research assistant professor. In 2018, she joined the Department of Molecular and Structural Biochemistry at NCSU. Her extensive cross-disciplinary education, including impressive postdoctoral training at Vanderbilt University, has helped to foster multiple collaborations and pave her way as a successful junior faculty member. She actively serves as an editor for the Journal of Nutritional Biochemistry. Thank you for joining Dr. Kenndey. Next up, we have Dr. Deborah Thompson. Dr. Thompson is a Director of Research Partnerships for North Carolina State University's College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. In that role, she works as a key liaison between university faculty and industry scientists. She develops and manages corporate partnerships among CAL's faculty and corporations around the world, with an emphasis on North Carolina and the Research Triangle Park, RTP, area matching college assets to the needs of industry. She's a results-driven and creative connector, skilled at identifying the synergy between academic and industry research programs and making relevant and valued introductions through established mechanisms and novel partnering models. Dr. Thompson is a trusted partner who leverages a deep understanding of faculty expertise and capabilities to act as a single door for entry to the college. She received her Bachelor's of Science degree in biology from Rutgers University and her PhD in molecular and population genetics from the University of Georgia at Athens. Dr. Thompson is a biotechnology and agricultural biotechnology professional with over 15 years of research and developmental experience. She has worked in academia, industry from startups to multinational companies, government, and not-for-profit institutions. She has mentored over 30 interns from high school, undergraduate, and graduate student to postdoctoral fellow. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Thompson. And last but not least, we have Dr. Polly Lynch. Dr. Ulanch is the Executive Director of the Crop Commercialization Program at North Carolina Biotechnology Center, where he facilitates value add-on opportunities to improve crops that result in increased profits for NC growers and strengthens the state's agribusinesses. Many of the projects extend outside the state to adding value to the greater Southeast and beyond. Current project work is pursuing increasing feed grain production in the Mid-Atlantic region to sustain North Carolina's production animal industry, optimize parameters for growing cellulosic biomass grasses to sustain a high-value chemicals industry, scale the use of winter oil seeds as a way to improve wheat production and attract specialty oil markets, and explore niche specialty crops that can be deployed at scale for food ingredients. Prior to this role, he served as the Enterprise and Technology Development Director, where he led efforts to support ag biotech entrepreneurs, enable partnership development, and assist companies seeking to locate to North Carolina. Dr. Ulanch received his Ph.D. in biochemistry from Texas A&M University, where he developed a process to accelerate the construction of physical genome maps, and MBA from the CATS Executive Program at the University of Pittsburgh with Beta Gamma Sigma honors. Prior to joining the center in 2001, he served as Director of Technology Commercialization at the NC SBTDC and as research faculty at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. He also consulted for and advised industry, commodity groups, and nonprofits in areas of science, marketing, and intellectual property. All right, thank you, Dr. Ulanch. All right, well, I'm going to stop sharing my screen here a minute, and so we can just focus on the panelists. All right. And to start off with, I just wanted to ask the panelists if you could just give us, a few minutes to please describe your educational and career journey, and specifically how your postdoctoral training may have influenced that journey. So if maybe Dr. Thompson, would you like to start off?
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. My background was fairly traditional. As you read, BS in biology from Rutgers, followed by, and here may be part of the part that's not traditional. I did take 3 years where I worked as a technician in a startup company. It was a lot of fun. I went back to the University of Georgia for a PhD. Following that, I came to North Carolina State University the first time to postdoc in botany, followed that with a postdoc in entomology. Left the university, went to a startup, came back to the university as a senior researcher, to really just code for postdoc who won't leave, and followed that with a stint at NIEHS, so got some government lab experience. Then at Bayer Crop Science, so a huge ad company, and frankly woke up one morning and decided if I ever isolated DNA from cotton again, it was going to be too soon. And so this might be my first piece of advice, as it were. It's okay to change. I've had so many different careers in my one career that I like to say that I had a millennial's resume before it was cool. Between 3 and 5 years at every step. And so having decided I didn't want to do lab work anymore, that's not the same as deciding what you do want to be when you grow up. And I did work for 3 years at the North Carolina Biotechnology Center as a program manager, reviewing grant proposals. And when the job that I'm in now opened about 5.5 years ago, jumped on it and have been in this role for almost 6 years now.
Wow. Before we move on, I just want to ask you a question that I thought of as you were talking. How did you find that research differed between academia, industry, and like government? Are there a lot of differences? Is it basically the same?
I have an N of 1 in a lot of those opportunities. I will say I never wanted to leave NIEHS. There was so much support for me as a research scientist. My media was made for me. My where it was washed and autoclaved for me. It was taken out of the lab and brought to the place that it was going to be washed. I didn't even have to do that. And then the technicians picked up the clean stuff that I told them I wanted. If I didn't actually remember that morning what I needed, then I had to go pick it up myself. Oh, woe is me.
Tough day.
Again, N of one, but that was an awesome experience. In academia, it seems to be a lot more variable. Smaller, less well-supported labs, you're washing your own glassware. Depending on how rich the lab is, you might be washing your pipette tips. And in the bigger, more well-funded labs, you're a little less hands-on for that. So I think that there's a lot more variability in academic labs. Again, industry, I think industry is really variable. And I've had experiences where I was doing a lot of my own washing and making of media, and I was doing less at other situations. So I'm not sure you can make a grand sweeping statement about that for industry.
Okay, I suppose that's fair. Dr. Kenner, I guess if you wouldn't mind, would you please, give a few minutes describing your educational and career journey and kind of like how your postdoc experience and training helped influence that? Oh.
Am I allowed to speak now?
Yes, yes, please,
Okay,
please do.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and thank you so much for having me. Actually, I remember I was working with some of the folks in this call for an organization like this, and it's great to see that you guys are doing this, even though we are in the middle of some sort of crisis. Okay, so about me. So I had, as you were saying that into introduction, I had a couple of degrees in mechanical engineering, and when I was doing PhD, I started to work with lots of simulation data. And towards the end of the PhD, I think it was around 2017, I started to do some research about artificial intelligence and its potential applications in material science field. And I think that was really significant because then when I started to apply different groups all over the United States, even though I ended up with a few offers, I chose the project that is including high amount of machine learning and artificial intelligence applications, which I was working with Professor Patala in NC State Material Science and Engineering Department. And I think that was a very nice experience in terms of this specific field, because I was working with some mathematician collaborators and I got to learn a lot about the foundations, the very basics about the machine learning and artificial intelligence technology. Then when I wanted to look for some other opportunities in other fields, it helped me a lot. Like when I was working on some other different real world or business related problems, it really didn't take me long to learn and articulate the problem. So this is very, very briefly the flow that I had. And I mean, I just wanted to show you the connection between all those dots because I was doing a very theoretical material science research. And now I am very profoundly supporting business and business intelligence. And the denominator was always data science and machine learning, which I grew a really large amount of interest. And now this field is kind of controversially changing the science and technology field. Everyone is doing something around it. And now, again, after all this experience, now I ended up with one of the very hot research field of artificial intelligence that is natural language processing. So in my job, we usually try to answer some business questions, but we are using lots of state-of-art models. Now it has some sort of business versus presentation communication skills, and also some sort of research aspect and some coding. And after all this PhD and postdoc years, this is what I am doing right now, and actually I love it. And I think I learned a lot when I was a postdoc at NC State, and it really helped me to penetrate deeper in this field and be more visible to the people who can hire me.
Yeah, do you think living in, like, being a postdoc at NC State and being so close to RTP kind of helped facilitate, I guess, that transition for you into like data scientist, or do you think that's something that you would have kind of fallen into anyway?
Wow, interesting. I think it had a little impact. I'm not sure if what would I have done. I'm not sure about that part, but definitely, yeah, RTP has lots of different, even I can say high-tech companies. I mean, it's not Silicon Valley, everyone knows that, but still, for example, GSK campus is, I think, almost as big as their first headquarters in Philadelphia, which means thousands of people are working here. And I got to have other network through variety of different data scientists from RTP field. And also what I like about RTP is some groups are really active in Meetup. So yeah, I think maybe I should say yes, because the RTP has its own network, especially in data science field, because that's the example I have seen. So it helped me a lot. I connected to so many people, and everyone is introducing each other to other people, and that's how I got to meet my current boss. So yes, being right in the middle of RTP and NC State, I think that's the reason I am holding this title right now. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's cool. Dr. Kennedy, I guess kind of the same question. If you wouldn't mind describing your education and career journey and kind of how your postdoc training helped you.
Okay. Hello. Thank you again for the opportunity. So as it was stated before, I started off as a chemistry major. Usually a lot of science majors go in chemistry or biology. They have a drive to kind of go into medicine. And that was what I was thinking from the beginning. I was fortunate. My mother is a biology teacher and my father is a physical chemist. And so I was making the decision. They were kind of like, choose chemistry because you really don't know if you want to go into medicine. You don't really like blood. So like, I don't think this is going to be what you're going to want to do. So I was fortunate. I'm thankful for that. But I chose chemistry. I enjoyed some parts of it. Physical chemistry was not my favorite area, which did not make my father proud, but I tried. And so I was still on the fence about what I wanted to do. Once I graduated, I was still like, do I want to go into industry or do I want to go into graduate school? So that's why I stayed on as a master's and did more research experience working in the lab. I was working on projects in inorganic inorganic chemistry. And so it was kind of interesting to me, but I wanted more of a biomedical because I still am interested in like medicine. I still always had an interest in nutrition. And so I applied for a fellowship at NIH once I finished my master's. And from there, I worked at NIH in cardiovascular disease, and that kind of sparked my interest in how metabolic disease and how it develops and its relation to obesity. And so from there, I was kind of like, hey, maybe I want to pursue nutrition. And so I looked for graduate programs. I did want to come back home. Being in DC is not that far, but I lived in Florida and I wanted to go back home. So that's how I looked at UNC Greensboro and actually went and just contacted them one day when I was home. over a break, and then went and talked to them about the research that was going on in their lab. And that's where they were looking at these anti-obesity fatty acids and trying to understand mechanism. And so that kind of combined my chemistry background, what I had been learning at NIH. And so I was like, hey, this sounds like a perfect fit. And so it was actually, UNC is a kind of smaller university, but I had a great experience. One thing just to note, always have great mentors and people that look out for you. I had opportunities where I was able to get fellowships with NIH. I had a fellowship with Merck and was able to do some research experience there also. Published well, and then that helped prepare me for my next step. My Merck fellowship or opportunity helped me kind of decide if I wanted to go into industry. It wasn't still like sold on that, and so that's why I decided to go and do a postdoc. One thing with my research experience at UNC, we worked mainly with cell culture. We would get adipocytes from people that were undergoing tummy tuck, isolate the cells and do our experiments that way. I wanted to stay in the obesity field. And of course, I need to work in animal models. So that was my drive in figuring out what I wanted to do in my postdoc. So I identified labs that were working with like animal models, doing human studies in obesity. Again, I wanted to stay in the South. I don't like cold weather because at that point, Boston was like the best area for you to go for research. And I just like, I can't move up north. I actually lived in Michigan growing up as a child, and I didn't. I was just like, no.
Done with it.
So that was part of my decision, and I had to be realistic about things that are important to me and where I'm comfortable. So I applied for a postdoc at Texas, Southwestern, and then at Vanderbilt. And I went to Vanderbilt and really had a great experience there. It was a smaller lab because the lab that I was going to go to in Texas was large, and they were working with a number of animal models. And just starting off, I just felt overwhelmed. So Vanderbilt was a smaller lab group, and it was going to be more one-on-one for me to start off working in animals. And so that's why I chose Vanderbilt. And there I had a great mentor. Started off with postdoc, but was able to get a KO1 award. I also got some other fellowships to help along the way. Worked with the Postdoctoral Association, trying to figure out, navigate what my next steps are. Again, at that point, to get scared about trying to go and pursue your own laboratory because of all the responsibilities. One thing, if you are trying to go into academia, I would recommend a business course because that is something that we are not exposed to going into this. You kind of go into it like, I'm just doing research. Money is in abundance. I don't have to worry about any of that. That's not how it works once you get into the real world. So I would recommend, and I do see like at Vanderbilt and I'm probably at NC State, they offer business courses for students if they're thinking of going into academia or wherever you're going to go into industry. So that was kind of one of my things that my biggest worry was the responsibility of being responsible for a whole lab, managing the funds and keeping it running. My KO1 helped me with that and got me exposed to kind of how to manage the budget, account for it, and you can't just spend frivolously. So that was a nice experience having that opportunity. And then from there, I picked NC State mainly because I wanted to go back into nutrition, and this opportunity opened up and it allowed me to go back and use some of that chemistry and combine it with biochemistry. And then, I can explore now. My group is looking at nutritional factors like fructose and how that impacts immune cells, and also looking at how T cells are regulated in this disease. So that's kind of how my track went and how I got to where I'm at now.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I also started off, I ended up doing an undergrad in biochemistry and then did a master's in chemistry. And it was that master's that made me realize, no, straight chemistry is a little too tough for me. So I think it's really interesting how you transitioned. And it's really good that you're able to pull back on that or draw back on that chemistry, knowledge and experience and use it in your work. I think that's important. Dr. Ulanch, thank you for joining us. I guess the same question, just to kind of get your educational and career journey and how your postdoc experience helped prepare you for that.
Yeah, sorry for joining a little late. I had an internet glitch here with the storm, so
Not a problem.
Glad to participate in this conversation. Yeah, both my undergraduate and graduate training, I felt were both in environments that had limited access to kind of out of the box thinking beyond academics. And I think that's a general challenge in the life sciences. So many people in the life science fields, they usually end up going to some sort of graduate program or postgraduate training, whether it be medical school, graduate school, even for a master's degree. So I think many of the faculty that are training students, both undergraduate and graduate students, their experiences are rather limited in thinking beyond either traditional pathways of medical school or graduate school and going to an academic career path. So in my postdoc, I really switched gears beyond my graduate work. I went from doing plant genomics to developmental neurobiology and zebrafish as a model. So from a science pathway, it was incredibly different, but a lot of fun.
Yeah.
My goal was really to leverage the kind of technical skills I learned, but apply to a different model system. But also when I was a postdoc, I made sure I networked as much as possible when I was at the University of Michigan to look at out of the box career paths that were not necessarily the traditional academic pathway. And that's where I kind of really grounded myself that I wanted to explore more being involved in entrepreneurship or working in more of a small company field. I followed on my postdoc at U of M to University of Pittsburgh, where I was research faculty. But while I was there, I consulted on the side as well as within the university, their tech transfer program, and obtained my MBA because Arion mentioned earlier maybe taking a class in business. I wanted to go all in and knew that the MBA program was really a way to leverage my past skills, not necessarily opening new doors, but opening doors I could open them a little wider perhaps. And University of Pittsburgh was really helpful in trying to explore more alternative careers. In Ann Arbor, Michigan, there was limited opportunity to really kind of explore that outside the university. University of Pittsburgh as a community as a whole, especially in the small company side, small and mid-sized companies, there's a lot more life science activity going on there with startups. And my take-home point from my participation in this panel is RTP has a wealth of companies in related disciplines. And it's a great opportunity, I think, to be at NC State and be a postdoc to consider opening a door to different career paths. The industry opportunities here, there's a wealth of people to network and connect with. And beyond, business is more my interests. So doing things within a company level, I think, either from a scientist or more business development or another business pathway, there's a lot of opportunities. But because of that, there's also growth and opportunities here for scientists in other areas such as journalism, law. And I think because of the industry we have here, just the RTP in general is a great opportunity to explore more than just traditional academic science. And with that being said, following that traditional academic pathway, because of the industry and other opportunities here, I think could easily enrich an academic pathway if that's the one you want to pursue. So in short, I would say take advantage of the networking opportunities that are available. There's a whole lot of programs across different disciplines. My background is more ag, but there's a lot going on the healthcare side. There's a lot going on in the engineering and data sciences. So certainly leverage this panel to get ideas on how to go down the pathway you guys are most interested in.
Yeah, I actually think that's a really interesting point because, I think some of the statistics are that there are more and more PhDs being awarded. I don't remember the exact numbers, but more PhDs being awarded. And, the number of traditional academic jobs has relatively stayed the same. And so, where are PhDs going? And it tends to be into more non-traditional academia paths. Or even non-academic, I guess. But, you mentioned you kind of forged your own way, kind of going down this non-traditional path. But, kind of how did you navigate that? Were there like mentors that you had, or did you just really just kind of do it trial by fire, just do your own thing, ask and see if they'll say yes or what?
No, that's a good question. I tried to explore alternative careers when I was at Texas A&M, but there were so few opportunities locally within College Station. It's largely just a college town, handful of companies that are there. But because there was limited corporate interaction of the faculty within the department I was in, I didn't necessarily feel that alternative career paths were something that were suggested that graduate students should pursue, or even postdocs. At the University of Michigan, I found that a little bit different. There certainly was opportunities within the university to attempt to network. The community was certainly, I think, larger than what I experienced at Texas A&M. Certainly not as large as there is here. I mean, here there's doors open aplenty if you want to look at alternative ideas. And I think also just in general, the faculty I've had a chance to interact with at not only NC State, but at UNC and Duke, there seems to be a lot more open-mindedness to alternative career pathways, and allowing students to explore those. And hopefully, I mean, I think most of the faculty have found that really enriches the activities that go on in their lab, to have a breadth of experiences and interests amongst all the team members within a laboratory. So yeah, you mentioned mentors. I mean, when I was at the University of Michigan, I did have a chance to network with a handful of people who were involved in startup companies, most of them more at the business level. And they're the ones who kind of provided me some guidance as to where to look for, how to transition from more of an academic science pathway into more of a corporate pathway. And that's why I got involved in consulting and trying to leverage my experiences to that which a startup company may need. Many startups try to be cash flow efficient and not necessarily hire a big team. They're highly reliant on leveraging expertise of outsiders. So if you have a particular science background, whether it be engineering or life sciences or what have you, that is a fit for a company need, many times there could be a short-term consulting opportunity where you help them out through a project on a contract basis. And with a large number of startups here in the area, that's, networking is a good way to kind of come across those opportunities.
Okay, great. Yeah, I guess with thinking about mentors, as postdocs, we have, mentoring PIs, but how do you go about kind of like finding a mentor, who's not your direct PI, like somebody that you think could help you get going the direction that you want your career to go?
That's a good question. I think in many times it takes a little bravery in networking to find the people maybe in the particular pathway you're interested. So certainly exploring ideas at first, going in with a good sense of maybe what your future interests would be, and then just trying to find the right people that are within that general area. So I guess my two stories would be when I was at the University of Michigan as a postdoc, I got lucky and actually met somebody who had a history in RTP. He had done business development with a company called Paradigm Genetics back in the late 90s. And at that time, my pathway took me to Pittsburgh, not here immediately, but he made some connections with me to folks in Pittsburgh, and they continued to mentor me for the next few years. When I got here to RTP, there was a networking opportunity that I went to, and it just so happened I met three people that particular night, and I still remember this day fondly. I was within, newly moved to RTP, probably here less than 2 months, went to this networking program, and I happened to meet three people that night, one of which I know many people on the ag side know. But the other one was a local venture capitalist investor, Lister Delgado, and I just bumped into him, said hi, cheers with a beer, and he connected me with a handful of other folks. So I think those happenstance encounters certainly are great. I just got lucky that one particular evening. But having a general sense of what your interests are certainly helps get a conversation started. You want to have a way to sell yourself of what your interests are, not just what your skills are. And that, I think, is necessary for opening doors.
Okay, awesome. We actually have a question from one of the postdocs here. Dr. Thompson, this might be a great question for you, but I'll open it up to the panel. What were the challenges that you faced when changing careers? And I guess maybe for you, Dr. Thompson, in regards to like going from academia to industry or academia to government, right?
I would love to say that it was all planned, but it wasn't. So that's the first thing. I think for me, it was a matter of chasing an opportunity that was going to let me learn something new. For me, I hate the phrase lifelong learner, but it's a pretty decent description. If I'm not learning something new, I get bored. If I get bored, and Paul's worked with me before, if I get bored, then I build something new, and that's just not a good choice. See, he's laughing, he knows me. I think for me, the biggest challenge was moving away from the lab bench. And as I mentioned in the introduction, I knew what I didn't want to do. That was the first step. I didn't know what I did want to do. And that was a big challenge for me because all I knew was bench work. And so I did some of those things. I did Myers-Briggs test. I did all of those. You know, as scientists, we sometimes think, oh, I don't want to do that. That's so touchy-feely. But it did teach me a lot about myself, and it taught me that the environment that I really loved was an academic environment. So here I am back at NC State. It taught me that I wanted to do something different every day. And I laughed when I saw the prep question that said, what does your typical day look like? I don't know, different. So there is no typical day. And for me, that's good. It keeps me excited. It keeps me interested. It keeps me frustrated because there's an awful lot of work, but still, it's those things I learned about myself were really interesting. And I will say that the thing that I did that offered the most value was I sat down and I wrote my perfect job description. And I was laughing at myself the entire time thinking, this is stupid. Why are you doing this? You hate this stuff. In reality, what it did for me was when I saw the posting for the job that I'm in now, I recognized my job. And so I knew I had to apply for it. And I think that was really, at the end, it was really valuable. There was no guarantee that I would find the job that I really wanted, but at least it helped me coalesce my thoughts of what that job might be and where it might be.
Yeah, I think we all can relate to that a little bit. So we have another question from, yeah, we only have 15 minutes left, but have another question. It can be for anybody. Does anyone have any advice in regards to holding questions in both academia and industry, potentially dealing with conflict of interest and balancing responsibilities? Kind of a tough one. Paul? Oh.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I work with many entrepreneurs across different fields, primarily now in ag. But there's many times where you come across, usually it's faculty members who have an idea that turns into an innovation that's not quite ready for a large company just to license it right away out of the university, that it needs to kind of go through a startup phase. Most academic researchers aren't necessarily suited or even interested in being, quote, that entrepreneur, but many of them are. And sometimes there's a balance of how do they, teeter with their academic career path. It's not just research, but it's also education. There's a lot of teaching. Many people on the ag side have extension requirements. So it's a full plate already. And to say I'm going to build a startup, somebody's got to have a lot of gumption in order to do that. That's not necessarily for everybody. Many times my recommendation's always been, find a partner that can help you with that startup potentially, and maybe be a member of the company as, on the advisory board or maybe the CSO. A lot of times it's actually postdocs or graduate students that may have the opportunity to start the companies. And in those cases, there's still some conflict issues that need to be resolved. But if there's connections with both the PI and the tech transfer office, usually those can easily be resolved. I'd say the other one that kind of comes up frequently is consulting. And the universities usually have pretty tightly written guidelines for how to manage consulting. And usually, as long as you're not consulting that's in direct competition with the projects you're working on, usually isn't any issues, as long as the consulting agreements, that those arrangements aren't necessarily detracting from your responsibilities at the university, and then impeding on any IP development or publication or what have you. But certainly those are opportunities. Usually universities have well-drafted conflict of interest statements and guidelines. That may be another question for Deborah, or if any of the other panelists have had direct experience in specific things that have happened at NC State.
Oh yeah, that would definitely be a good question. If anybody has anything to weigh in on that. But if not, we do have other questions. Do you want to go, Deb?
Just to agree with Paul, and I wondered maybe if Arion had run into this in the past, but we do, as Paul said, the conflict of interest rules are in place at the university. As a postdoc, your PI should have access to the people that can help you with that.
Dr. Kennedy, I do have a question from the postdocs for you. What was your experience like as a research assistant professor, and would you recommend that route for postdocs considering it?
I think it gives you some more time to figure out what you want to do, possibly. There are some advantages if you are kind of thinking of still going into academics, because it is showing that you have your independence, kind of. With my situation, I was still working in my PI's lab, but it was kind of that gateway of like, yes, eventually I'm going to be moving into independence on my own. It lets you kind of get a seat at the table, attending like faculty meetings and getting into what's going on behind the scenes versus what you just see working in the lab, and giving you a little bit more independence basically, and working on your own projects. So it is kind of a step up, because there at Vanderbilt, I went from a postdoc, and why my position changed is because I was able to get funding on my own. And so I got my KO1, and then after that, they promoted me to a research assistant professor. And the thought was, yeah, she's going to probably be going into this, academic field eventually. So I do see if it's an opportunity. I don't see a negative thing towards it. It's just about what you're going to do with it, because some people can get stuck in, and that's fine. There are people that are research assistant professors. They work on their own independent projects, but are, affiliated within either just the department or with somebody else's lab. You're still able to do your research. You may have a little bit more of a cushion in regards to you're not just out there completely on your own. You have support from, like I said, your PI or within the department if you have other responsibilities with that. But I wouldn't discourage it and be like, no, with this in life, you can forward your own pathway. You can go, like, if this assistant professor or this doesn't work, I may want to go into industry later. Who knows? You can always change careers.
Good to know there's hope. So we are starting to run a little short on time. I didn't think the hour would go this fast, but Dr. Kenner, we have a question for you. Someone asked, what could you suggest to other postdocs who are interested in landing a data science job, but are not coming from an engineering background like you?
Okay, thanks again. I don't know how I switched back.
Sorry, sorry about that.
Thing, but okay, nice. So I think I was always very, very close to this field when I was in PhD, and specifically the NC State. So it helped me a lot, but there was still a huge gap in terms of the end application that I was working on. So it wasn't a super easy, smooth landing in the other field. But this is what I have done, and I think I have leveraged this a lot. So I think there is a couple of things very unique about the data science field, which is a super, super recent, rapidly growing in quantitative field, I'm gonna say. I think one thing that can be really advantage to someone who is trying to get deeper in this field is the availability of lots of different online sources. Now, if you type something very simple on Google, like online data science course, probably you are going to end up with at least 50 different free courses. And keep using that leverage. You cannot get high level experimental skills in front of your computer, but you can do it for data science. And this is what I have done. I mean, I was very fluent in coding, modeling, playing with the data, even some visualizations. But I think Udemy, I am hoping that we are allowed to say this brand name here, but Udemy definitely changed my life. I still follow some courses in Udemy. And honestly, I was able to give very comprehensive answers to interview questions out of what I have learned in Udemy. And Udemy is just an example. You can go with anything else. But I think having a one solid online course would be a good start, especially for the ones who are not coming from a very quantitative, analytical, or engineering background. And the other thing, the other part of this effort has been Kaggle. I think Kaggle is the best thing about the data science field. It is just like some people are throwing very cool questions around, and everyone is competing over that. And the good thing is everyone is sharing their approach while being in the competition. So okay, maybe I should give this example as well. We recently hired another data scientist who is now working closely to me, and actually I conducted technical interviews maybe for 8-9 different people. And I think it is, if someone can solve some problems in Kaggle, I'm not talking about taking someone's notebook and giving a little modification, but if you can get the data set itself, and if you can formulate your problem, if you provide a nice logic flow on the data, how you process it, how you manipulate it, how you select your model, how you visualize it. If you can do that on a, let's say, middle level Kaggle problem, I think you can also solve lots of company problems. And so that's what I want to emphasize. Like, if you are strong, if you are powerful in some online data science sources, probably you are a very competitive candidate to any data science position, let's say. Yeah. And but of course the other thing is, you shouldn't just solve it and keep that in your local machine forever. I also strongly suggest everyone who is interested in this field to create a nice, readable, comprehensive GitHub repository. And another thing, I mean, we had lots of them, so I was able to do that, but maybe it's not going to happen all the time. But I didn't proceed with the candidates who are not showing me a GitHub repository, because I need to show your code, I need to show your skills, then I am going to be able to ask you, stretch you over your work. So these are just a couple of tools, online sources that people can play with. I mean, if you are not coming from a strong mathematical background, you just need to cover a few maybe statistical / mathematical courses. But that information, that skill set, definitely out there online available. Like maybe it's not free all the time, but in Udemy you can take courses for like between 10 to 30 bucks depending on the time.
Oh.
And believe me, especially in the field of data science, you cannot put a price on information. It is super, super valuable. You can change your career, you can change your field, you can change everything if you digest, process, manipulate, and present the related information to the related people. I'm hoping that this gave a little bit of answer to that question.
Yeah, that sounded like some great insights, I think, to that question for the parts that I understood.
Okay.
Being not a data scientist. But so I see we're quickly approaching 5 o'clock. I was going to see specifically with the panelists if you guys wouldn't mind, if you're open to staying on a few more minutes, and maybe we could field a couple more questions.
I can stay for a little bit.
Okay, awesome. Well, because there was one question I wanted to get to, which was, and I know all of you guys being from different backgrounds, you'll have different answers to this, is, you know, what does a typical day look like for you? And then how has this changed in a COVID-19 world? You know, how has being virtual impacted your day-to-day, you know, operations? So anyone?
Who is first?
Well, you're unmuted. Do you want to go first?
Yeah, let me use that special time. Yes, I can go first.
Okay.
Okay, the first part of the question is, how does a typical day look like, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, my typical day looks like some meetings. If I am lucky, it is just 1 hour, but sometimes it can go up to 6 hours. Which I am not a manager, I am not a director, I am a very hands-on technical person. So actually I'm not supposed to have so many meetings, but my company is a huge company, global company, and communication collaboration is super, super strongly promoted. So sometimes you just get to have meetings to check on some parallel projects. So yeah, meetings are always a part. And other than that, I usually try to organize my time in terms of two different sections. First is to research, because like, again, it is a super fast growing field. There are different models, techniques, codes, repositories, packages, libraries published every day, so I'm trying to follow up with that. Then the other part is the coding part. I mean, we are not really doing software development. I usually start with a package that I am finding online, but then of course, to be able to use that package on your specific data set, it takes lots of tailoring. So I need to get under the hood, I need to play with it, I need to code it, and I need to put it in a best place in the overall pipeline, data pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, some meetings, some research, and some coding is pretty much my typical day. And meeting part is very important, and I think it is the biggest difference that I am observing when you compare the academic world and that super business oriented environment. It's not like you are going to a few conferences in a year. It is every week you need to present something to someone. It can be just your senior director. Sometimes, depending on your experience, it can be vice president, which puts a little bit more tension. But it is, you need to communicate a lot. You constantly report, and you get lots of feedback. So that meeting part is where you are being too introvert so that you can keep going on your job. With COVID, they put us in home office by the beginning of March. In terms of professional effort or projects or anything. I think we haven't lost anything. On the contrary, our workload has increased because now we need to report, we need to add effect of COVID in pretty much all the reporting, all the data analysis I am doing right now. So actually I have been busier. Like I am literally using my commuting time in my job, in my work now. But other than that, like our infrastructure was already, I think, pretty ready. Nothing has changed. We are working just the same. Just we are not getting together physically, but everything is going same.
Mm-hmm. I gotcha. One of the other panelists, do you have anything different to add to that? Or same, I guess. Dr. Kennedy?
So it's been a bit of a change for me. So normally, of course, I'm in my office and then I have the research lab that's across the hallway. Usually I have a postdoc and then I have 2 graduate students, and usually I have undergraduates working on projects. My lab doesn't like me in the lab anymore, really, because I like things, it's a whole different thing. So they kind of like, when I'm in there, like, what are you doing? But usually I have one-on-one meetings weekly with everybody within the lab. I also meet with other faculty. I've met with Deborah to talk about possible projects. I do notice in this position, I have a lot more meetings and a lot more emails to go through every day, be it somebody that's just interested in what my research is, or if I'm responding to another collaborator or working on a grant. So it's a lot more trying to balance where I would like to go in the lab and do experiments. Now you have some people in place that can do that for you. I do enjoy the ability to get the data now, and I can just focus on it and just be like, hey, can we try this? Can we go here? Because this is where the data, and following the data and being able to talk about it with everybody. But I can say my lab probably gets annoyed with that, because I'll walk in like, we're going to change and go in this direction. And they're like, what are you doing? I was able to sit down and read through the literature, and this came up. And so I'm like, let's go and see this. So with COVID, that has changed a lot in regards, because we kind of had to scale down on our productivity in the lab. So we're right now been doing a lot of data analysis. So we have some RNA-seq data that we've been going through. We have NMR and mass spec data that we've been able to analyze. But you are kind of stuck with like, yeah, you look at the data and now we can move on and try and do another experiment in, say, our mouse model, or do some cell culture, but we can't right now because we didn't have access to our lab. I am happy now because we have started the restart, so we can get back in there. We're starting to do an experiment on Monday, but that's been a challenge. So right now with COVID, I've been doing, of course, a lot of Zoom meetings, and then we still have our one-on-ones. We still have our lab meeting and discuss the data. But then one thing that has been nice is I've been able to focus just on grant writing. And so I've been able to get some grants out. So that's been nice. The downside, of course, with me is I started thinking about all these ideas, and then I'm like, oh, well, we can go and test this because we have samples from this experiment, and we can't. So I just have to work with what I have right now. So that's the downside. We're making it work. You know, moving forward, kind of, we don't know if this is going to continue or we know it's over. So the mindset is kind of just to get in there and get the experiments to a point where you can just analyze data at home, and we can move from there. So it is, you know, changing how you think about your experiments and moving forward with your research in that regards. And, you know, maybe we need to just move. So we're just doing a lot more data analysis on data sets versus, you know, normally we're at the bench trying to do another experiment. Hopefully they'll let it be that it's just one person and we can get some things done. But those are the things, those are the challenges that we're having, but we're making it work. You know, there's always a research question, and reading through the literature, you can always come up with new ideas. So we're finding new ways to keep it going.
Gotcha. The other panelists?
Yeah, so I can take that because, as I mentioned, I don't regular day. One of the things that's constant is tons and tons of email. I think a couple of other people mentioned that. And one of the things that I have to get used to in this role is inbox is not necessarily a requirement. So I'm letting things, trying to get better at letting things slide. I'm not doing very well, but that's a goal. My job can be anything from hosting an industry partner on campus, reaching out to a brand new industry partner. I will say that one of the things that has changed a lot with COVID is I'm doing a better job at finding and connecting with new industry partners. So we call that discovery. There's a company, you think that company might be a good fit, or I think that company might be a good fit for one of our faculty members' research programs. How can I wend my way into that company? How can I get them on the phone or on Zoom? And one of the good things about nobody really being able to travel is they can't get away from you by saying I'm traveling, because you know that they're not. And so you have a slightly better chance, slightly higher hit rate of getting the first conversation with industry partners. That's one of the things that's changed in COVID. In a role like mine, I have for 6 years said I can work from anywhere. I'm getting the chance to prove it. Work from anywhere. I don't necessarily like it because I don't get the interaction with my colleagues. The sort of, what do you call them? Just the collisions, right? So I work 2 days a week typically at the Biotech Center. I run into Paul, and Paul and I will just chat at one of those, well, nobody has water coolers anymore, but a water cooler conversation. And I can't, those aren't happening. So that's a loss. And then constant Zoom, like everybody else, I'm getting a Zoom headache by the end of the day. I think a lot of people are. It's replacement. It's not 100% replacement. And then I think probably the biggest challenge that I have now and all the time, whether I'm working from home or working from another location, is clearing those many meetings so that I can get the time to do a project. And so balancing that, I don't think I'm alone in that. That's one of the challenges that I face, whether I'm working from home or whether I'm working from another location.
It's, I guess, refreshing to hear that, I guess at all stages you kind of deal with that, wanting to do the work, but also needing to, like, you know, say no, like turn off the email and that kind of thing.
I'm
Dr.
really
Ulanch?
bad at turning off the email.
I think we all are sometimes, especially, you know, deadlines and things like that. Dr. Ulanch, do you have any comments on this?
Yeah, I don't think my life's terribly different from any of the other panelists. I think the one thing I would say, and I just point out something that Arion mentioned earlier, was recommendation for courses in business. I think Deborah did that. I'd say two things that I do that I didn't necessarily expect I would do, but I would say are very similar no matter what career path I went down, is, and even as I reflect on, you know, many of the science advisors I had when I was a undergraduate, graduate student, or postdoc, many times those people were never in the lab either. And the thing I would think of that I do now that they also did was they needed skills in project management, and they also needed skills in personnel management or human resources in a way, you know, just general management skills of how do you corral a team around a project and how do you manage that project. You know, I think as an academic advisor, that's really a transition from a graduate student and postdoc of being the set of hands at the bench. They've really learned how to critically think about how do you advance a hypothesis and actually either prove it or disprove it. But you get to the point then where you're actually managing a team and you no longer have the time, either through teaching responsibilities, the grant writing, you know, the going to conferences, managing the lab. You're no longer really at the bench. Many of those faculty members aren't. So I think the two things that I currently do in my job is, you know, people management and project management. Those are probably same no matter what career path you go down, whether that's academia working in industry as a scientist, or the alternative career paths that Deborah and I are on, where we're no longer really in a lab at all. Those are skill sets I think that would be wise skills for any postdoc to develop.